You saw the number on the screen, $2,000. A house shaped like a dome that holds 70 degrees on the hottest August afternoon and the coldest January night, without a furnace, without an air conditioner, without a power bill that bleeds you dry. And somebody decided you're not allowed to build it where you live. I need you to understand what that means. The thing that could cut your survival costs to almost nothing, the shelter that keeps your family warm when the grid goes dark, is quietly against the rules in most of suburban America. I didn't read that in a book. I learned it standing inside one of these domes in the dead of winter, with no heat running, watching my own breath disappear because the air around me was warmer than the storm outside. By the end of this, I'll show you a document from 1983 that explains exactly how a buried dome becomes a battery for heat. It's the piece almost nobody knows, and it's the difference between people who stay comfortable when the power fails and people who don't. Let me start with the part that sounds impossible. A normal house is a leaking bucket. You pour heat in through the furnace in winter, and it escapes through the walls, the roof, the corners, faster than you can replace it. In summer, you pour cold in, and the sun cooks it right back out. You are paying every single month to fight the temperature of the world. That fight never ends. It just gets more expensive. A dome doesn't fight. It stores. The first modern one that proved this went up in 1976 in Shelley, Idaho. A man named David South and his brothers built it, and here's the part that stops people cold. It wasn't even a house. It was a potato storage. They needed a structure that would hold a stable temperature through an Idaho winter to keep a mountain of potatoes from freezing or rotting. What they discovered was that the shape itself, combined with a thick shell and a layer of insulation, barely changed temperature at all. The potatoes stayed fine, and South realized he'd built something that could keep people just as comfortable. That became the Monolithic Dome Institute in Italy, Texas. Their method is almost strange to watch. You inflate a giant fabric balloon they call an airform. You spray polyurethane foam on the inside of it. You hang steel rebar off the hardened foam. Then you spray concrete, they call it shotcrete, right over the steel. When it cures, you've got a shell that behaves like nothing a stick-built house can match. I remember the first time I spent a full night in one, I'd stopped trusting the thermostat because I was sure it was broken. Outside, it was well below freezing. Inside, no heater running. The walls were just faintly warm to the touch, like something alive. The concrete had soaked up every bit of warmth from a wood stove I'd run that afternoon, and it was handing it back to me hour after hour, long after the fire went out. That's thermal mass. The mass is the savings account. The furnace is the loan you take when your savings run dry, and a good dome means you almost never have to borrow. The Federal Emergency Management Agency looked at these structures and used language they almost never use. In their guidance on safe rooms and shelters, monolithic domes are described as offering near absolute protection, winds over 250 miles an hour, debris thrown like missiles, fires. There are documented cases of these domes standing untouched while every conventional house around them was flattened. So here's the first thing that should bother you. If a structure this strong, this cheap to run, this safe, has existed and been proven for nearly 50 years, why is almost nobody living in one? Why have you probably never stood inside a single one? Somebody benefits from you not knowing. Hold that thought, because it gets worse the deeper we go. If this is already making you rethink what a safe home even looks like, do me one favor before we go further underground. Subscribe, because this channel is built for exactly this. The 70-degree shelters and buried homes they'd rather you never build in the suburbs, and I don't want you to miss the ones coming next. And tell me in the comments right now, could you actually live in a round house with no straight walls, no furnace, no monthly heating bill, or does that feel too strange to trust? I read these, and I want to know which side you land on before I show you the part that changes everything. And if you want more than what fits in a single video, I've put everything I know into a set of build guides called Bunker Basics, Deep Bunker, and Bunker Blueprint. Each one goes deeper than the last, covering the exact measurements, the material lists, the ventilation math, and the mistakes that can hurt you, all in one place you can work from at your own pace. The link is in the description. If you're serious about building something that keeps your family safe when the grid fails, those books are where I'd start. Now, let me get back to the part that should make your blood run a little cold, because the concrete dome I just described isn't the $2,000 one. That number sounds like a lie, and for a poured concrete dome, it is. Concrete, steel, and the airform balloon cost real money, tens of thousands of dollars, even if you do the labor yourself. So where does the $2,000 house come from? It comes from dirt. There was an architect named Nader Khalili, Iranian-born, came to America, and he spent years obsessed with one question: how do you house the poorest people on earth using nothing but what's already under their feet? His answer was a technique he called SuperAdobe. You take long tubular bags, fill them with the soil right there on your site, and coil them upward in rings, each ring a little tighter than the last, until the walls curve inward and close into a dome. Between each coil of bag, you lay a strand of barbed wire. That wire is the secret grip. It bites into the bags above and below and stops them from sliding, the way steel bites into concrete. That's it. Earth-filled bags, barbed wire, a shape as old as the first shelters humans ever made. Khalili wasn't some fringe dreamer. In 1984, he stood in front of NASA and presented these Earth structures as a model for building habitats on the Moon and on Mars. Because the logic is the same. You can't ship building material across space, so you build with what's already there. He founded an institute in Hesperia, California, called Cal Earth, the California Institute of Earth Art and Architecture, in 1991. And here's where the skeptics usually go quiet. People said dirtbags could never be safe, never pass a real building code, never survive an earthquake. So the structures were put through official testing against the Uniform Building Code in the early 1990s in earthquake country in California, where the rules are as strict as anywhere on the planet. They passed. Bags of dirt and barbed wire, engineered into a dome, met the code I've built with this method. And I'll tell you what the videos don't. It is brutal, simple, honest work. Your back screams, your hands blister through gloves, you move earth by the ton, one bag at a time. But the materials for a small dome really can land near $2,000 because the most expensive thing in it is the soil you already own. When that first ring closed over my head, when I stood inside a shelter I'd made from the ground I was standing on, I understood why Khalili called it building with the earth instead of against it. But a dome sitting out in the open sun has a weakness, and it's the same weakness the potato storage dome solved by accident. Above ground, even thick earthen walls eventually track the seasons. Bake all summer, chill all winter. The thermal mass buys you time, days of stability, but not a year of it. To get that flat, unchanging 70 degrees, you can't just build the dome. You have to put it in the ground. And the ground is where people start dying from mistakes. Here's the number that makes the whole thing work. Go down about 10 feet into the earth almost anywhere in the continental United States, and the soil temperature stops caring what season it is. It holds steady somewhere around 50 to 55 degrees all year long. The heat wave doesn't reach it. The blizzard doesn't reach it. The earth at that depth is a flywheel that's been spinning for millions of years, and nothing you or the weather does moves it much. That's the foundation of every earth-sheltered home. You're not trying to seal yourself off from the temperature of the world. You're plugging into a temperature that's already stable and already free. Bury a dome or push earth up over it in a berm, and you hand it that 55-degree baseline. Then a small amount of stored solar heat or a single wood stove run now and then is all it takes to lift that baseline into the 70s and hold it there, but the earth does not give this away for free. It charges in ways that catch people off guard, and I've seen every one of them. The first killer is water. Soil is heavy, and wet soil is heavier, and it pushes on a wall with a force that will crack a flat wall wide open. This is the first reason the dome shape matters so much down there. A dome doesn't have flat walls for the earth to shove against. The curve turns that crushing sideways pressure into compression that runs around the shell, and concrete and packed earth are ferociously strong in compression. The shape that keeps you cool is the same shape that keeps the hillside from caving in on you. The second killer is quieter, and it's the one that scares me the most because you can't see it coming. Air. When you seal yourself into an earth-covered space, you are inside a box that does not breathe on its own. A conventional house leaks air constantly through all its gaps, and that accidental leakage is the only thing keeping the air fresh. Seal the box up tight to save heat, and now you have a new problem. Every breath you take burns oxygen and pumps out carbon dioxide. Add a flame, a stove, a lantern, a generator anywhere near that space, and it doesn't just use oxygen. It produces carbon monoxide, a gas you cannot smell, cannot see, and will not feel until you're already too confused to save yourself. I had a moment underground I have never fully shaken. A friend and I were finishing the inside of a bermed dome, cold day, doorway sealed with plastic to hold the warmth, and we'd brought in a fuel heater to take the edge off. After a while, the work got harder. Simple things stopped making sense. I remember reaching for a tool and forgetting mid-reach what I was reaching for. It was him who said we needed air, and we pulled that plastic down and stood in the freezing wind, gulping it like water. That fog in my head was the early edge of carbon monoxide, and if we'd pushed another hour, one of us might not have walked out. The earth doesn't warn you. It just quietly takes the oxygen and waits. That's why ventilation isn't an accessory in an underground home. It's the whole game. The good news is the dome shape helps again. Warm, stale air rises to the top of a dome. Put a vent at the very crown and a low intake near the floor, and you create a natural chimney effect, the stack effect, where warm air escapes up top and pulls fresh air in low, all on its own, no fan, no power. Get that airflow right, and the space breathes even when the electricity's gone. Get it wrong, and you've built a beautiful, comfortable, 70-degree tomb. So now you understand what you're really looking at. A shape that beats the wind, resists the fire, holds a steady temperature, breathes without power, and can be built from the dirt under your boots for the price of a used lawnmower. Which brings us to the question that should make you angry. If this works, why is it banned? Because the answer isn't about safety. It never was. Walk into most suburban developments in America and try to build a dome. You'll hit a wall that has nothing to do with engineering. Homeowners Association covenants that dictate the shape of your roof, the pitch of your gables, the material on your siding, the very silhouette of your house against the sky. Zoning codes written decades ago that assume every home is a box with a peaked roof and simply have no category for a round, earth-covered structure. Appraisers who will value your dome at pennies because there are no comparable sales, which makes banks refuse to lend on it, which means most people can't finance one even if the town would allow it. None of that is about whether the building will keep you alive. A FEMA-rated near absolute shelter gets rejected because it doesn't match the neighbor's roofline. Sit with that. And here's where it stops being an accident. Think about who loses money when a house needs almost no heating and almost no cooling. Think about the utilities that bill you every month for the energy a dome barely uses. Think about the production builders whose entire business is stamping out identical stick frame boxes as fast and cheap as possible. Boxes that leak energy for the next 50 years so somebody keeps collecting. A house you can build for $2,000 that never sends you an energy bill is a threat to a lot of people who are very comfortable with the way things are. The rules didn't appear to protect you. They appeared to protect a system that depends on you living in a leaking box and paying for the leak forever. The knowledge to escape it has existed for decades. It was tested, it was proven, it was presented to NASA, and it was quietly zoned out of the neighborhoods where most Americans actually live. Now, I've walked you through the shape, the earth, the air, and the reason they'd rather you stayed in the box. But there's a level of this I promised you at the start, and it's the piece that turns a comfortable dome into one that holds 70 degrees through an entire year with no furnace at all. Before I give it to you, I want to be straight about something. Everything I'm describing here, the depth figures, the airflow, the wall pressures, the material lists, the exact mistakes that fill an earth home with the wrong air, I've put all of it into a complete build manual, the full blueprint with every measurement and every step laid out in order, and the link is waiting in the description below. If you don't just want the story, if you actually want the numbers to build one of these and get it right the first time. That guide is the whole record, including the failures that could hurt you. That's there whenever you're ready for it. Now let me show you the document that ties it all together. Because there's a problem I haven't solved yet. I told you the Earth 10 feet down sits around 55 degrees. That's comfortable-ish, but it isn't 70. 55 degrees is cool. To get from that baseline to a genuine shirt sleeve 70 all year, most people assume you still need a heat source running through the winter. You don't. And the reason why comes from a book almost nobody has heard of. In 1983, an engineer named John Haidt published a work on something he called passive annual heat storage. Read that phrase slowly because it's the whole secret. Not daily heat storage. Not storing the sun's warmth overnight. Annual. Storing the heat of an entire summer and releasing it across an entire winter. Here's the idea that changes everything. The earth around your buried dome isn't just a stable 55 degrees by law of nature. You can warm it up. Over a hot summer, the sun's heat soaks down into the soil around your home. If you could keep that heat from escaping and keep that soil from getting wet, the ground itself would slowly climb over months from 55 toward the 70s and then hold there, releasing warmth back into your home all through the cold season. You wouldn't be heating your house. You'd be heating the mountain of earth around your house once a year with the sun for free. But bare soil won't do it, and this is the part that stops people. Rain soaks down through the earth and carries your stored heat away with it, and wet soil conducts warmth right out to the cold surface. So Haidt's answer was a thing he called an umbrella. You lay a skirt of insulation and waterproofing, not just against the dome walls, but extending outward through the earth, roughly 18 to 20 feet in every direction, buried a few feet down like a wide hidden roof over the soil around your home. That umbrella does two things at once. It keeps the rain out so the surrounding earth stays dry, and it traps the heat in so the sun-warmed soil under it can't bleed its warmth to the sky. You've just turned a 20-foot radius of ordinary dirt into a giant, dry, insulated battery. It charges all summer and discharges all winter, and the dome sitting in the middle of it barely moves off 70 degrees year after year with no furnace burning anything. That's the missing piece, not the concrete, not even the dome. It's the buried umbrella extending out into the earth that nobody photographs, because once it's covered, you can't see it. And if you can't see it, you'd never know to build it. People tour these homes, feel the perfect temperature, and walk away thinking it was the walls. It wasn't. It was the invisible skirt of insulation turning the ground itself into a storage tank, an idea written down in 1983 and buried almost as thoroughly as the umbrella itself. That is how a $2,000 dome holds 70 degrees all year. Cheap earthen shell for the shape and the strength, buried in the ground for the stable baseline, wrapped in a hidden umbrella that lets the sun charge the surrounding soil like a battery, ventilated by the natural rise of warm air so it breathes without power. Every piece proven, every piece documented, every piece sitting right there for anyone willing to look. Here's what I want you to walk away feeling. It was never that we couldn't build homes that keep our families safe and warm for almost nothing. It's that we were quietly steered away from them into boxes that bill us forever and told the round, buried, self-heating alternative just wasn't allowed here. You're not powerless against that. You just needed to know it existed. And that's the whole point of standing where you're standing right now. You're the kind of person who would rather hear the hard truth and be ready than stay comfortable and be caught out when the power fails and the box goes cold. That's not paranoia. That's just refusing to be dependent on a system that was never really built for you. So let me leave you with one thing to chew on and one question I actually want you to answer. The thing, that 18 to 20 foot umbrella, is the single detail that separates a cool underground room from a home that holds 70 degrees through a winter with no fire. Miss it, and you'll build something that works half as well and never know why. Get it right, and you've got a shelter that heats itself with last summer's sun. Now tell me down in the comments, and be specific because I do read them and this audience never speaks up unless I ask, would you build the buried dome with the umbrella? Or does going fully underground still scare you more than the bill you pay every month? And which do you want me to take apart next? The ventilation system that keeps the air breathable when the grid is gone, or the flooding failure that drowned an Earth home I'll never forget? Because that next one starts with a man who did everything right, built the perfect dome, and forgot one thing about water. And what happened to him is the mistake I never want you to make. You just watch the overview. Inside the shelter circle, I pick up right where I stopped and walk you through the whole off-grid dome build from the spray to the shotcrete finish. You can ask me your own questions, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be alone here. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime with one click. Now, imagine never worrying about running out of clean water again. There's a simple $100 engine that can give any home an endless, safe supply. I'll show you exactly how it works right here, starting now.